Hi there. I'm going to talk about the implosion of the Zimbabwean economy in 2008. The economy collapsed, and the ordinary woman or man on the street of Harare or Bulawayo was now a dollar billionaire. But this is not like you would expect in US dollars. It was in the local currency, also called the dollar. Just to illustrate the scale of the decline, in 1980, when the country attained its independence from Britain, the local dollar was worth 1.6 US dollars. Then in 2008, the local dollar was virtually worthless, and 1 US dollar could buy you 2 trillion of Zimbabwean dollars. And one might want to ask what actually happened to get to the point where the economy had collapsed so spectacularly. The causes various, and the first one was Zimbabwe's intervention in the DRC war. In 1988, President Robert Gabriel Mugabe, I'll call him RGM from now on, had sent the Zimbabwe Defense Forces troops to fight in the DRC. The government called the spending that came with the intervention gave a shock to the economy, from which it never actually recovered. The government liked to estimate that the cost of intervening was only 200 million in the local dollar, but the actual cost was actually close to 10 billion in local currency, 10 billion in the local Zimbabwe dollar, which was equated to 263 million US dollars at that point in time. On top of that, the ZDF, the military, had lost about 200 million worth of equipment in the local currency. Then in 1999, both the World Bank and the IMF stopped providing loans to Zimbabwe because of the money that was used to pay for the country's adventure in the DRC. Then the other issue was the payoffs to the war vets in the style of typical abuses that come with a dictatorship. RGM needed money to bribe his enemies and at the same time reward his allies. In 1997, the government paid 50,000 in local dollars gratuity to each war vet, and there were over 100,000 of them. And then in 2002, the government went on to pay a further 160,000 people who claimed to be war vets, and there was no way to determine who was a war vet and who was not. So it appeared that the government was simply dishing out money to its supporters. And this time it was never disclosed how much money was paid. The war veterans were in charge of intimidating the electorate, ordinary Zimbabweans, into voting for the ruling party, and they later carried on the invasion of white farms belonging to the white community. The ruling ZANU-PF claimed that the farming community supported the opposition, and veterans of war vets, as we have seen, claimed the takeover of farms was a continuation of the war they had fought in the 1970s. The chaotic and violent takeover of farms in 2000 and then drought in 2003 destroyed the country's export base. And then the farms, farmers were supported by banks through loans, and the takeover of the farms, the immediate result was the collapse of the banking system, and between 2000 and 2009, 7 banks collapsed, And then the other reason why the economy collapsed was the systematic rigging of elections. For example, the president, RGM, called a referendum in 2000, which, in all fairness, it was conducted in a transparent manner, and RGM lost that referendum. 55% of the people rejected the proposal to acquire land without compensation. The president felt that this was a humiliating experience, and it signaled, and for most observers, it signaled that time was up for him. And in the 2002 election, the opposition, in the 2002 election, the ruling party claimed that it had won, but the opposition disputed this. And then in 2008, most observers agreed that the opposition candidate, Morgan Tsvangirai, had got 73% of the vote, but the electoral body fiddled with the numbers and claimed the opposition candidate had got just 49% of the vote, which it called for a runoff. And then when the ruling party had lost, the military stepped in and went on the rampage, assaulting villagers, intimidating them to vote for the ruling party candidate. The opposition party candidate, Morgan Tsvangirai, pulled out at the last minute, and the ruling ZANU-PF party went on to claim its victory. Then the country itself, it was like on the brink of collapse. But before we get to that point, the judiciary was actually literally under siege, and it was claimed that the courts were passing rulings that were unfavorable to the government, and there was a campaign to get rid of judges under the guise that these judges are remnants of the racist governmental institutions of the former colonial regime. RGM later went on to pack the judiciary with a bunch of judges who were pliant and could pass judgments favorable to the political elites. And the first one was to forced to resign was Chief Justice Anthony Gabe, who retired prematurely in 2001, and he was accused of favoring the white farmers in court judgments. Ironically, it was RGM himself who had appointed Chief Justice Gabe in 1990, but then for political expediency, that did not matter much, and yeah. And then another High Court judge, Judge James Deviti, who had passed the 3 court judgments against favorable to the opposition, received death threats from the war vets. And yeah, so all these, all these what these goings on, they by 2008, 2006, inflation had reached 1,000%. The country attained the dubious distinction, and Zimbabwe now had the fastest shrinking economy outside of a war zone, and the government's attempts to stop prices from skyrocketing were ineffectual, to say the least. The central bank governor, the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, claimed in 2008 that hyperinflation peaked at 2.2 million% in July of 2008, but Bloomberg estimates it was closer to 500 billion. And the aftermath of economic collapse, it was the ordinary Zimbabweans who lost and ended up paying a high price for the mismanaging of the economy by the political elites. The country's industrial base collapsed, and factories closed their doors, and in the major urban centers of Harare and Bulawayo, people tend to selling vegetables and trinkets on the streets. And then in the rural hinterlands, where most Zimbabweans live, the people were literally starving, and some families were surviving on 1 meal a day, or in some cases going without any food at all, and hospitals went without medicines, and the entire health system was on the brink of collapse. Cases of malnutrition, especially in children, skyrocketed. And then the net result of all this was that the able-bodied and the educated elites in the cities voted with their feet and left the country in their thousands. Those who could afford airplane tickets went far afield, as the UK, Australia, Canada, and the US. And however, for most people, the preferred destination was to decamp to neighboring countries, uh, particularly South Africa, and then Botswana, and then Namibia. And the scale of the crisis was such that people were prepared to risk crocodiles in the Limpopo River in order to reach South Africa. And by by the end of 2008, the country Zimbabwe had joined the long list of failed states, such as Central African Republic, Democratic Republic of Congo, Mali, Somalia, South Sudan, and outside of Africa, places like Haiti. So that was the what happened in 2008 in Zimbabwe. Thank you so much for listening to this presentation, and if you like the material presented, please give me some likes, and don't forget to subscribe. Bye.